Welcome to the School Zone Safety and COVID-19 panel. Thank you to our partners at Aviva for supporting our elementary road safety program, for their commitment to school zone safety, and for making this panel possible. I'm looking forward to this conversation. The panel is being recorded, and we'll send out the link to everybody in the next day or two so you can watch it again, share it with your colleagues. Just for all of the participants, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You're probably used to this by now on all the Zoom calls you've been and panels you've been on or webinars. We'd love to get your questions answered by our panelists. So if you have a question, please submit it and we will bring forward as many as possible when we get to the Q&A portion of the panel. So today we have three panelists joining us, bringing perspectives as a parent, as the police, and as a student transportation service. So let me do a couple of introductions just to give you a sense of who we have today. And I think the conversation is going to be really interesting. So first up, we have Constable Randy McDonald, who is a senior level 2 constable in the traffic section for the Calgary Police Service. He works in the residential traffic safety unit, where they address traffic safety concerns raised by citizens in residential areas of the city. Randy has been a police officer now going into his 18th year. Congratulations. A large part of the traffic concerns he deals with are around schools. These concerns are sent to him either by principals or concerned parents through a document called a traffic service request. He also works closely with the Calgary School Board and Catholic school principals to address these kinds of issues. Randy is part of a safer mobility team, which is partnered with the City of Calgary Roads to help address any concerns or issues within the City of Calgary. We also have Leslie Maxwell, who is currently the school travel planning supervisor with Student Transportation Services of Waterloo Region here in Ontario, where she works to make active school travel an easier choice for Waterloo Region families. She has over 13 years experience in active school travel that really started 20 years ago as a frustrated parent, many of you will identify with that, who lived a stone's throw away from a school that she couldn't get to without a car. I'm interested to hear about that, that story, Leslie. And we also have Jen Paquette, who is a stay-at-home mom with passion for hair. She has a wonderful husband and 2 daughters, Olivia, who's 9, and Cara, who's 7. And Jen loves being involved with their school. She is the secretary of school council, organizer of the annual dance-a-thon, and she enjoys being involved with the traffic committee to better improve the school community for the safety of the kids and their families. So welcome, Jen, Randy, Leslie. I'm going to kick this off by asking each of you to share briefly a bit about how you became involved with this issue, related to school zone safety, and just tell us a little bit about that. Then I'm going to walk through a couple of questions, and then we will turn it over to the participants and get their questions. So Jen, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you became involved with this issue? Obviously you're a parent, and
yes,
that must play a big role.
Yes, it does. Being that I am as involved as I am with the school and with council, it was a little bit of wanting to further help the community and being the neighborhood community and the school community, and wanting to better help the rest of the neighborhood by getting involved with the traffic committee at Phoebe Gilman. And it was also partially the principal that I believe tried to get me in there as well, because I always have a few ideas for school council meetings. So why not get me involved with the traffic committee as well?
Super. That's great. Thanks so much. Leslie, you want to tell us a little bit about maybe you can share that story about how you had to drive your kids to school, even though they were a stone's throw away.
Sure. At the time, I lived in the U.S. and in the south of the U.S. And there was only one way into our little rural school, and that was by roads. every single student in that catchment area was bused or offered busing, but many parents drove. And I was in that group because I had, all those pressures to get my kids to a dance class or to gymnastics or to a music class after school. So I faithfully lined up with other parents in a grand queue. It was a snaking road out to the driveway, or out to the roadway, three cars deep, and we lined up in droves to pick up our kids and to drop them off that way. So I at about a year in, I had a bit of an awakening, because I had a friend who lived here in Canada who told me that her first grader was walking to school by himself sometimes. And that just blew me away, that was even possible. So I started to do more reading and talking with her. And I got really excited about the potential. A lot frustrated by the fact that I couldn't do it at that particular school. But as I read more, I realized that my kids should have that access and the right to independent mobility as they grow.
Mm-hmm.
So when I thought that I was loving them by picking them up and rushing them off to many different programs, I realized after some time that really demonstrating my love for them and for all kids could be better spent focusing on making active school travel more possible and feasible for more families. So in the meantime, we moved back. This is home to me, so we moved back home to Canada. And I've watched traffic a lot since then, and I was able to break into an evolving industry around active school travel. And now I have a team of 3 in the Waterloo region who focus purely on encouraging active school travel and decreasing traffic in front of schools. I get to work with the busing consortium here under the direction of funding contributors from 3 municipalities and 2 school boards. And we have a lot of support here from good people who want to do the right thing, and some good activity, but we have a long way to go. So that's why I'm here.
Excellent. Well, welcome. I'm interested to hear more from you. Absolutely. So Constable McDonald, where did you start in the police service? And when did you move over into traffic?
Well, I started out in one of the districts. That's where you kind of cut your teeth when you're first on the job. So, and then traffic's kind of a specialty unit for us. So I tried to make my way over to traffic as soon as I can. I like being a motorcycle instructor. I like to ride the motorcycle. So that's what kind of brought me over to wanting to be a traffic officer. So, and my work started with the school's own safety, started about 10 years ago when I was in the traffic education unit. And we worked with what was called Alberta Motor Association, so AMA. And what we did was we trained the school kids to do the patrols. And but we kind of lost that program, and that went over to the school resource officers in 2017. But I continued to do the school safety when I joined the residential traffic safety unit. Mm-hmm. And so I initially worked with the schools and the principals to kind of address the concerns that they were having around the schools, and as well as the concerns sent in by the parents. So it more or less started with designing hug and goes and drop off areas. But then when we wanted to make those changes had to come through the school board, and city roads had to be involved in that decision making. Mm-hmm. So that me to forge some relationships with those groups. And so now we all kind of work together to resolve those issues. And so now I have a great opportunity to work with some great people to make change around school zone safety. And our unit also does what we call a school blitz. And what we do is we attend a school during the peak times with about 4 or 5 officers, and we monitor mm-hmm. traffic. So people see the police out there, and that's generally the day that traffic's the best. And then that day we're back the way it was. So that's how I kind of got involved with school safety.
Great. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
So Leslie, I'm going to start. Start maybe with you and get you to talk a little bit about this recent statement that was issued by the Ontario Active School Council. Can you give me and the participants and other panelists an overview of the statement? What are the main takeaways and recommendations for safe, healthy school travel, when schools open in September?
Sure, and you'll bear with me for a moment. I'll give you a bit of a background. The Ontario Active School Travel Council was formed about 2 years ago. And as part of the Ontario Active School Travel Fund that's provided by the Ministry of Education, they gave $2.5 million to schools and communities to support active transportation to school. So in the interest of finding out if some supports could actually encourage more kids and families to choose this mode of transportation. There are 28 funded projects, and our partners, like my group in Waterloo, are watching traffic all over the province. Mm-hmm. What we've seen and what we know is that the school run traffic accounts for up to 25% of morning traffic. Significant portion, and if we could remove it all, then our traffic problems would probably dissipate across the city as well. Mm-hmm. But this percentage of drivers adds a crazy amount of congestion, unlawful parking, traffic jams. I know Constable Randy can probably attest to this, and what I like to call commuter brain. That's sort of the added. I guess when you're driving and you add a lot of small frustrating points of reference together, it actually contributes to a bit of a tension and stress in the cabin of the car, and parents are quick to react and without thinking or pulling apart what's actually happening in front of them, and so put them inside this congested area, and that actually creates a very, very dangerous situation. That happens under normal circumstances. This year, as we return to school, we're in Ontario. We've been asked to look at 3 different potential models for return to school, and that is either we're not in school at all, or we go back to school full-time, regular number of kids, or we have some hybrid model. If we don't go back to school at all, I'm not worried about traffic, but I am worried about those kids. Right. I think that they need to get back into school. If we go back full-time, we have the potential of, I can realistically guess that parents won't feel comfortable putting their kids on the bus, and they may not feel comfortable letting them walk or cycle without some support because they don't know. There's too many unknowns. So we want to be prepared for that. And also with the hybrid model, there may be fewer cars at school, but we'll be developing bad habits if we allow everyone to drive and to get their kids right up to that front door. We'll still have congestion because there will always be that one spot that every car wants to be in, and it's the closest one to the schools. So we want to take the opportunities here. What the other side of this is that we're seeing a lot of families walk every night, enjoy each other's company, enjoy the simplicity of getting around and the way we're moving right now. They love the traffic. They love the air quality reports that we're seeing. We want to kind of launch from there and say, let's do this differently. Let's find the support. So Ontario Active School Travel Council stepped in with this statement in order to hope to support that movement. And I guess as an overarching, you wanted a bit of an overview of what it says. I threw down a few notes here, so because I wanted to cover everything. We wanted to shape the thinking around school travel upon reopening so that we could build the confidence in parents that it would be a normal and safe area for their kids to be. Because what we're asking is that fewer parents interact with the kids and fewer parents interact with each other, because they are a more severe threat for spreading coronavirus than the kids are. So if we can encourage as many kids as possible to walk to school on their own when they're old enough and they have the capacity to do so. The reallocation of space that a lot of our cities are doing right now are providing the space for them to do that safely with the extended bike lane or extended sidewalks and additional bike lanes. So that's very, very helpful. But we also want to make sure that those parents who feel compelled to drive at least consider parking a distance away and walking in with their kids, so that there are fewer big vehicles in the way and less congestion at the school frontage. So those are two of the big points. We yeah, I guess that's where I'll stop with that. Actually, the biggest thing is that there is space to walk and cycle. Those are modes of transportation that are supported by public health as safe, and in fact can boost your immunity, etc. So so we want to make sure that people consider this as their number one choice.
Yeah, and I would wonder whether if there are an increase of parents that are working from home, even into the fall, into next year. We've heard some companies have said they're not going back to the office until January. Whether that would increase the number of kids that are walked to school either by a parent or allowed to walk to school on their own, just because the parent is home and sort of feels a little more comfortable. So it'll be interesting to see if there is any positive impact from that scenario that isn't necessarily directly related to the school, but just sort of what all of the context around the kids getting to and from school.
That's a great point, and it would be great. I know, working from home myself, to get up and walk in the morning and to walk again in the afternoon would help everybody's productivity, I think.
Yes, for sure. So you've gone through this process to develop the statement. Have you heard about any other provinces or territories developing similar types of recommendations? And if they wanted to, how might they go about that?
I haven't heard within Canada's borders yet. What I heard cursorily from BC is they already have they have great infrastructure, and they had great systems, and a lot of kids were walking already. So they may not have the need like we have here in Ontario, and other provinces may find themselves in the same situation. I'm not sure. We sort of took a lead from The Hague in the Netherlands with these guidelines. They really stepped out, I guess, in as early as late April or early May with a set of guidelines with the same sort of tenets. And so I think other places around the world are seeing that this is a potential issue, and that they're trying to step out ahead of the game and not be reactive, but rather be proactive to keep our kids safer.
Great, thanks.
And I guess to answer the other part of your, to answer the other part of your question, to get started, it helped that we already had this council in place, but bringing together some stakeholders from various areas. The OAST council is made up of people, we have police officers, we have public health represented, we have I think I had them all listed here somewhere, but we have municipalities there. And cycling, Share the Road, and Heart and Stroke is there. So, so we've had a good stakeholder committee that could run with this, but it doesn't take too many to pull together a small group of people who can have a larger voice together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we find that with a lot of road safety and other issues, that every sector brings a different perspective, but they also bring a different solution, and then they can learn from one another. So it's quite interesting. Jen, speaking of one of the major stakeholders in this issue, the parents play a huge role in school safety, especially if they choose to drive. They often think it's safer and quicker to do so. What are some of the reasons you've come across in talking to other parents and your own experience around, why they choose to drive rather than walking with them?
Okay, so sorry, I dropped out of the chat for a moment there, so I didn't know that we were at me. Sorry about that. So to answer that first question, parents probably want to limit their exposure, and parents don't want to expose themselves during drop-off, regardless of whether they walk to the school, drive to the school. It's a matter of not wanting to expose your children or yourself. Maybe you live with an elderly, you have mom or dad living with you as well. It's also another matter of, I know my daughter has children's asthma. there are others that are far worse than that, exposure could be an issue. For some reason, maybe whether it's a child or a parent, they don't want to wear a mask or can't wear a mask for any given reason. People are probably, given whether they're working from home or not working right now, people have become lazy with COVID out there. Not going to say I haven't myself. And also just people could be nervous or maybe even a little paranoid about it. And driving your child to school is easier than having them walk.
Yeah, so there's some similar kinds of reasons pre-pandemic of, reasons why they would continue to drive their kids to school. But then there's, as you listed, so many others that now come into play that might increase. And we don't want them to increase, the amount of driving.
Exactly.
We want them we want those cycling lanes and those extended sidewalks and things like that to be in place. So it facilitates more. So as a parent, what supports do you think would encourage parents to allow their kids to walk or bike to school, given, the pandemic and the physical distancing measures and things like that? What would make the parents more comfortable in encouraging them to let their kids do that?
A few options that have been thrown around within our school is that there's the walking school bus, maybe those that are friends that are within your safety bubble as of now. A walking school bus where you can grab your friends along the way, and all the more kids, less traffic. If one parent is taking 5 or 6 kids versus the 2 that are theirs, or however amount of children you have, it's less congestion, walking congestion, driving congestion at the school. And another one that came up, our former VP actually did this for the last couple of years at our school, was to entice more walkers with or without COVID, was to entice the children by having a golden shoe award. And
I love it.
So the class with the most walkers has the golden shoe award hanging on their door. So it's a piece of paper, but it's amazing how much competition you get when you have 735 students in your school.
Yeah, well, it's something
So
to aim
that
for.
went over really well.
Yeah, something to aim for. Do you think parents will use this time, over the summer to, walk the route to school, to kind of prepare their kids perhaps to walk to school in the fall, or is that something that's been chatted about?
I would hope so. Being that it's nicer out now, it's easier to get out. In Ontario, it's actually been really hot lately, but being outside and being able to distantly see people will get more people out and maybe entice them to maybe start walking and to continue that habit that we once had, to continue when school opens, hopefully in September.
Yeah, I would hope so, and hope that we can encourage that, or at least plant some ideas in terms of what they can do, right?
Oh, definitely. I was one of those that walked every school today, whether it was plus 30 or minus 30. I still walked my girls to school, because dealing with the kiss and ride loop was more of a hassle than the walk to and from.
Yeah. I can totally understand that. Constable McDonald, let's hear from you. What are some of the main safety and traffic issues you see in the school zone? Some, just because the parents are there, they're often the ones, even though they're the most concerned for their kids' safety, they're some of the worst offenders, if you will, in terms of, double parking or parking too close to the crosswalk, et cetera. What are the things that you see, the issues that need to be addressed?
Well, those were actually 2 of my top on my list here.
Sorry.
Parking, no, that's okay. I'm glad you got to share that. But yeah, exactly. Like double parking and then letting kids run out between the cars and the buses. Just and when I speak on these, I'll probably shake my head a few times, because there's some of these, when they happen, you have to shake your head because you just wonder why they take place. Again, parking or blocking crosswalks, right? People park within 5 meters of that crosswalk, so it's unsafe for the kids to use. By the time they actually get on the outside of that car, they're already in the middle of the roadway and the cars can't see them, right? Other times parents will park right on the crosswalk to let their kid out to get on the crosswalk, but then that doesn't allow anybody else to do anything, right? And then if congestion starts and they're already stopped on the crosswalk, then nobody's going anywhere, right? So that's kind of a big one. My biggest pet peeve is jaywalking and stopping the traffic to cross your child across the road. I've asked parents that numerous times. I've asked them, like, at what point is it safe to walk out into the middle of the road and stop traffic? Do you normally do that? And they're like, no. And I go, but now you're doing it with your child in your hand, right? So that one just is very frustrating. Again, then we also have like U-turns. So people just do a U-turn in the middle of the road. Now we got kids jaywalking, we got people doing U-turns, right? Sometimes they'll do U-turns at the intersections that are prohibited by the sign because the kids are crossing at that crosswalk, right? Again, and like I said, in the middle of the road is another unsafe practice, right? Speed, of course, is always a concern in these zones, but not so much during the rush hour peak times, because the traffic volume generally keeps the speed down. And then again, parking where the buses are supposed to park and then not moving. They just want to sit there. The bus needs to come in. It can't pull in and park. So now it might be sitting out in the middle of the road, and parents just don't want to move. They've got that spot and that's their spot and they're not moving, right? And then the other part comes when we get people that, you know, if they do sort of the right thing and park off the street down the road a little bit, then they'll park and block people's driveways. And then the other people can't get out. And you speak to people about that and they'll say, well, you know, I thought I had 15 minutes, like a 15-minute grace to drop. Well, I said, well, how is that person supposed to get out of their house then, right? They got to wait 15 minutes for you. And then the next person wheels in and they got to wait another 15 minutes. So that causes frustration as well. So those are kind of the peak ones that I kind of see around the schools.
Do you have any examples of school zones that have been either through how they've built the physical environment around the school, or by signage, or people out directing traffic? Have you seen some school zones that have done a good job in addressing some of these issues?
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to kind of what Leslie was saying as well. We have similar group here that we work with all our partners to take care of that and do exactly what Jen's doing, be the advocates. And they're out there and, you know, they're making sure that the kids can cross safely. They're pushing the rectangular flashing beacon so that the kids can cross, monitoring. They'll do their hug and go zones or their drop zones. Mm-hmm. And as pull in, they'll open up the doors, let the kids get out, and that parent can just continue on. So yeah, we have lots of great spots where principals, the parents council, and groups like Leslie have just stepped forward to really help with that. It does take a little bit off us for the enforcement, but again, when we're out and about, I think it also speaks to what Leslie said. When parents get in there in the morning or late in the day, it's almost like they get brain freeze and they just forget about what they're doing. And then they just choose that convenience over safety. And then that's just the way it goes from there.
Yeah, they've got all the other things on their mind about what they, getting to the office, or at the end of the day, getting home and having enough time to get dinner and off to whatever the evening holds. So, as we look into the future, none of us have a crystal ball, of course. Anyone who does would make a fortune these days. So what kind of, changes with physical distancing measures that will, it will exacerbate existing challenges? Do you think there's anything that will be become more positive? Do you think there will be more walking and biking to school? And, what can we do to maybe now think about some of those things that might be challenges in the fall, and how might we mitigate some of those?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not really sure what to expect this year, right? I mean, we had the challenges obviously before COVID with the same part, right? With, parents wanting to have that front row parking and doing the unsafe behaviors that we just discussed, a lot of the infractions that we see, right? So I think now if parents are feeling that they need to drive their kids to school, it's just going to increase the volumes, right? If we took even 25 more cars and put those into any of those scenarios, the congestion is just going to be horrendous, right? So I think that's going to be a big part. Parents might feel that just sitting in their car is safer, so they may just be taking up that parking spot that could be used for a drop zone, just to drop a child and keep moving, right? So again, like I said, I'm not really sure what to expect this go around. I think we got the challenges that we had before, but now we're going to have the challenges that we haven't seen. And of course, we don't know those until that time comes, sort of thing. So, but yeah, it's, I'm hoping that, as we discussed earlier, that, as parents are doing more walking and doing that kind of stuff with the kids, that it's creating that safe barrier that people can feel that, okay, yeah, you know what, we can walk to school. We just walked for 3 months doing all our other stuff. I think we can walk to school now.
Right.
I think it would be a big bonus, right? So I think it's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah, and the system itself will have such an impact on some of the things that we've been talking about, that don't have anything to do with the transportation to and from school. I mean, how they configure the classrooms. Leslie, you were talking about, the different scenarios, whether you're back, 3 days a week, 1 week, 2 days a week, the other, if it's, part hybrid distancing, that kind of thing. And some of those will have an impact in terms of the number of kids that are going to school. If you were looking for some of the older kids to maybe do a walking school bus job, instead of the parents taking them, some of the older school kids taking the kids as well. So there's some things that, that we can't anticipate, but that will seriously impact some of the transportation issues as we go forward. So I know it's a bit of a conundrum at this point. I think the scenarios are sort of trying to plan for what the broader context will be, and then I think we'll just have to deal with it as it comes. So I'm going to ask each of you this, to answer this question. And we touched a little bit on this, but if you can expand on maybe some of your comments. But from your background, from your experiences, Leslie, you've talked about, a community group that's gotten together to encourage and support the, walking to school, biking to school with reopening. What, if you had to say what, one thing that you would want to see communities across the country consider as they do this, what would that be?
It's a good question. First of all, I want to roll back a bit to what Randy was talking about, and when he's describing the scene in front of a school, and parents' choices for the ways they get to school, or the ways they take their children to school, specifically around driving. That environment, that chaos, that dodging between cars, the even the kiss and rides where parents are dropping them off and running away, and that environment does not feel like it's made for kids. From a kid's perspective, they're not comfortable there because there's no space that's built for them. And I'd love to make people aware of that. That would be, if I had one wish, it would be, let's see what this looks like from a kid's point of view, because it is not comfortable. It doesn't feel safe. It never feels like they're doing the right thing. They have a parent calling them across the street to get into the car, and they've got people saying, no, don't jaywalk. But mom's right there. We've actually watched kids almost get hit while their parents were calling them across the street. And so there's a real disconnect between what is safe and what isn't safe. And when Randy said parents feel like getting in their car is safer, it's just such a fallacy to think that driving to school makes that zone safer or creates a safe space. It only makes it safer potentially for your child, and not even then. We know air quality in cars is worse inside the car than it is outside the car. We know there are more children killed as passengers of vehicles than on a sidewalk. We know it's not safer, but it feels safer, so we do it. And it creates a less safe space for everybody else. And we know in every school zone, there are always kids who need to walk. There are always kids who don't have the access to a vehicle, and they will be walking. So that zone is not a safe space for them. We need to do better. And I would love for people to consider, for municipalities to consider creating school streets so that there's a safe and closed street in front of a school for 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon. So all those cars that arrive at school actually stay a distance away. And then that way the traffic is dispersed in 3 or 4 points instead of all converging on one. And then parents will have to get out of their car and walk 2 to 5 minutes. And hey, if that's inconvenient for you because the drive is only 2 minutes, then maybe you'll actually walk all the way from home. So there's that opportunity as well. And with our guidelines, it'd be great if people could take them and use them in their own worlds, right? However they can use them to impact decisions. Like parents can practice the route to school and ask their board counselors and their trustees to consider supporting these guidelines. Municipalities can provide those school streets and better bike lanes and better sidewalks, more space for kids to get to school. Trustees can ask for a statement on behalf of their own school boards that supports active travel as their preferred method of transportation. There are lots of things that we can do. And sometimes we need to be a little creative. So I would ask that we get creative.
Yeah, I think your point about, it's a description that we use across the board or in child injury prevention is, children are living in a world built for adults. And when we talk about home safety in particular, we encourage parents to get down to the level of their child and see the world and what they can see and what they can get into from their perspective. And so you've just sort of taken that out of that context and applied it, externally to the school zone. And I think that would be an interesting experience for parents and teachers and other drivers, just to understand that, when you do see the difference in size between a child and an SUV or a child and the school bus, the front of a school bus even is just, and then all of the, as you described, the chaos around drop off and pick up times. Julie or Jen, sorry, when you think about, the conversations you've been having and your own thoughts about, sending your kids back to school in the fall, what would you like to see? Is there one thing or a couple of things that you really see as essential for the schools and parents to consider?
Personally, in our own school community, definitely a lot more crossing guards and definitely a lot more people walking. We do have a big school. We only have one bus for the outskirts of our community, but the amount of people that drive, I cross the parking lot with my daughters before and after school, where the kiss and ride loop is as well. And it makes it incredibly difficult. Kids have nearly been hit multiple times. There have been parents yelling and screaming because one didn't let them go when they thought that there was a go, and whatever. So that is one major thing from my own perspective that I would want, if I am crossing that parking lot with my daughters, I want the safety of knowing that someone's there that's going to direct the traffic on the road. So that would be my major concern.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's something that parents experience across the country.
Oh,
Constable,
I know I'm not alone.
yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, right? Like it's just like,
Yeah.
oh. I mean, not for you specifically, but if it was only in one place, it would be, that would be better than across the board. Constable Donald,
Exactly.
what would you see as, if you had one recommendation to encourage, safe and active transportation as we get back to school? What would it be?
Well, I guess from a traffic officer standpoint, I'd just like people to obey the traffic laws and not choose convenience over safety. To
Hmm.
me, it's just a simple statement, right? Like, just obey the laws, don't do what's unsafe. There's your child's there, other people's children are there. So, sometimes I'll say to somebody, well, you might be picking up your child now, but then at the end of the day, somebody else is going to be picking up their child while your child is standing here. So what part of that do we need to make safe all around? So that would be kind of one of my big. One other thing I just wanted to quickly mention is I know you had asked the question earlier about the same type of program that Leslie's got out in
Right.
Ontario. We have the same thing here. It's called Ever Active Schools.
Hmm.
And they work with a group from the city. It's called Livable Streets. So a lady named Tracy Coots is part of that program, and Monique Castanegay from Livable Streets. And they do so amazing stuff. It's unreal that, and it's exactly the same as what Leslie's doing. So we have that same type of program here. So it's great to see that it does cross borders or boundaries or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's a real focus on that. We are the hour with these conversations always goes so quickly, and I know we have a number of questions that have come in. I think are quite interesting. So I am going to bring Kelly back into our conversation, and she's been monitoring the Q&A section. And maybe Kelly, you want to take over and tell us what the participants are interested in hearing our panelists comment on.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Pamela. There's a number of questions come in from different perspectives. So let's start with one around the issue of busing. I know that, Jen, you said there's only one bus coming into your school, but in places where there are a lot of the students transported by bus, there may be a discomfort in parents to have kids traveling on a bus due to COVID-19 physical distancing. So what can we do to improve that parent confidence so that they will allow their child to take a bus if it's offered?
The one idea that I can think of is what if, so one rumor, I guess I should say, is that, and I can see it happening, is that schools will be allowing, schools will be doing the touch thermometer temperature check on entry into school. What if the bus driver was in charge of that for those getting on a bus? I know that puts a lot of pressure on them, but at least if it's being done, then maybe the parent will feel more safe about bringing that child on the bus and allowing some sort of distance and putting something in place that will make it safer and will make parents feel more comfortable about having their child go on a bus.
Okay, thank you. We've got another question as well about some of the incentive programs that we've had to encourage walking. I've got two that were mentioned, one specifically the walking school bus, the incentive like the golden shoe, but this encouragement to walk. But will there be, how do you think COVID worries might affect all of those? Will these programs work, or do we need to come up with other things? For instance, walking school bus kids might be walking with kids who are not in their cohort. How to slice it that it's their cohort plus it's a walking school bus, things like that.
That could be something that also the principal or even the teachers can come up with. I know definitely something that council, I know we would definitely be, we'll probably be talking about it when we have a meeting. And just trying to, everyone has a friend. If there's a friend along the way, can you pick them up? And if they're within your bubble, pick them up. I know not everyone will be in your cohort, but it's trying to find new ways in this very weird world right now to make everyone feel as comfortable as we can given this time.
Okay. One for Sergeant, we have Jeremy asks about traffic cameras in school zones. Now we know here in Toronto that has been activated, but it's not, I don't think it's widespread. What about traffic cameras in school zones? Should we be doing more in terms of enforcement?
Is that one for me then?
Yes, I would say constable, yeah.
Okay, no worries. Well, in our unit, we have 4 photo radar units that actually work with us in our unit. And so we monitor playgrounds, school zones all the time. So we have manned enforcement and we have photo enforcement in our zones. And we just kind of rotate around to kind of give everybody some attention when it's required.
How has that been received? Has there been pushback from the community or?
Generally not, but I mean, there's always people that get a ticket that don't like a ticket, right? So that's the difference. But you know, our guys are out there, and people come and knock on the window and say thank you for being here. And when we're out doing our man stuff, you know, people are giving us the thumbs up. So I think it's a lot more positive than it would ever be negative.
Good.
Okay. We have a question here about how do we get the message across. Somebody from BC is writing to say that the school staff is struggling with capacity with all of the additional pressures that are put on them with online learning and trying to figure out what's happening in the school. So a message around road safety around the school might get lost in all of this. So the question is a great one, and I'm interested as somebody who leads marketing for Parachute, is what message helps get people on board or makes them easier to make those significant changes? The idea of getting the message across quickly and simply that sticks with administrators and parents. What's the message that's going to change people's behaviors? We certainly have a program here at Parachute called Elementary Road Safety. This panel is part of that, where we provide a lot of resources to tackle the issue of road safety around schools. But opening it up to the panelists, is there any examples of where it works? Maybe that's something that Leslie might have some experience with.
That's the golden question, isn't it? If we had one single message and one single outlet that would sink into everyone and get the message across, that would be really beautiful. I think the real answer is we need the message to come from many different angles, many different people, different levels, and we need it to come from and be apparent in different ways, so that not only does a parent hear in June or July that this is the way school is going to happen, and we suggest that you start practicing your walk to school or mapping out your travel plans so that you know how your child can get to school safely. But then they also hear as school approaches that you know, from the police, hey, we'll be enforcing this because it's important, and the child and the school zone must be kept safe. You know, and then we're hearing from the city or the mayor that we support active transportation and we're building new infrastructure. And then they arrive at school and they see not only our cars behaving and parking further away, but actually they can't get any closer because we've closed the street, or the curb is painted a whole different color because we have a new rule in this zone, so that things look differently and they jar them into thinking differently or to wondering what's going on that's different this year. We are experiencing that when we arrive at stores right now. You see a marking on the sidewalk in front of a store that says line up here, and you know exactly where you need to go. We have the technology to do this, and we should be thinking about using it in the school zone.
Okay. We have a question here from Catherine Hutkus asking any advice on how to get this conversation open to the wider community. That she says she is a road safety professional, but she has a difficult time trying to convince and partner with schools to talk about these changes. She says that she has success as a parent at her own school, but taking it beyond that is difficult. Any advice on how those with knowledge about how to make the changes in the school zones can get that dialogue going with the schools and with the parent communities?
I could maybe just touch, oh, sorry, Leslie.
You go ahead.
Okay, I was just I could touch on that a little bit because it's kind of similar for us. Like we have which is called a Safe Student Travel Advisory Group. And it's similar to what Leslie said, where there's lots of partners, right? So we have the Calgary Board of Education with us, with Brenda Gibson and Shiv Paul Sidhu. They do a great job. And then we have the City Roads people, Surendra Misha, Monique Castanegay. Then we have Tracy Coots with Everactive. I think those are the kind of people that, like with Everactive Schools, those are the people that they can reach out to. And then those people will engage with the schools. And I think that gets the dialogue started. And then I think from there, we kind of get livable streets involved and then city roads. And then if there can be effective change, then it's great. And if it's not, and it looks like it's something that we just kind of need to be looking at as police officers, then we'll do that as well. So I would reach out to people like Leslie and people like Tracy from Alberta here to start those engagements. Go ahead, Leslie.
Sure. I'll just add that that it helps to find the data that already exists that supports this kind of work, and take it to the right people. So take that data to the trustees and to the councillors, the city councillors, and ask for change. You'll find those participants who are interested in this work, and they will be happy to have your voice behind them as they present ideas to their various constructs. That way you can have a larger impact than just on your own individual community or school. Not to say that the greatest change didn't start with a community or with a school. So start there for sure. If you want to go outside of there, then start looking at addressing any trustee that will listen to you, any counselor that will listen to you, because a motion can be made from anywhere to make a citywide or a region-wide or a board-wide decision. So absolutely data talks, and the data's out there. And there's a lot of appetite at our political levels to make change happen. So the situation or the scene is set up for it already. You just have to step into it, I think.
Yeah, Leslie, you make a good point. I was thinking about the data aspect of it, and there's so much information on, the traffic services in any locality has their crash, their collision data. We have the healthcare data. Some of it, it's the near misses, the what would be qualified as like anecdotal information about parents who walk those or drive those routes and are there seeing the kid that only doesn't get hit because the driver was able to stop. So there's a whole lot of data that or volumes even in terms of traffic and things like that. So data definitely is a key piece that we hadn't talked about, that drive many decision makers, but I think like other issues, the solution, as you said, there's not one thing that needs to be done, and there's not one approach. And it depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking to a policymaker, a decision maker, they're going to be interested in, how much is this going to cost? How many people are getting hurt? Is this return on investment going to be worthwhile in terms both of dollars, but also, in terms of data on deaths and hospitalizations and things like that. So it's an approach that's complex that just makes it that much more sometimes very slow. But as we've seen more recently, even those complex issues of putting in new bike lanes or opening sidewalks up to more pedestrians, or even patios that people can dine outside, where there's a will, there certainly is a way.
We have a question here about parents having their work obligations. And as we've seen, we've all adopted to new work patterns and strategies. And the question is around, can we do more to support parents that they have that capacity to walk their kids to and from school at the school times when they're expected to be reported to their own workplace? Mm-hmm. So a couple of questions around how do we work to make it that parents can be at home with their children to walk them at the school times, as we start seeing more people returning to so-called regular work hours.
Well, it'll be interesting because I know there's been a lot of talk around corporations having staggered start times and end times so that there isn't the volume of commuting happening all at one time, but also so that everybody isn't arriving at their workplace at the same time, so that there is that ability to do social distancing or physical distancing, and to use the elevator, say in a way that allows everybody to get up without having to wait 3 hours to get up to their floor and things like that. There's probably some, and this is sort of what I was talking about earlier, that there's a number of system level decisions that are being made that will have an impact on some of this active transportation decisions, and supporting exactly that, supporting parents to make those decisions that have nothing to do with transportation. So it will be interesting. I don't know if there's been any talk, Jen, in terms of the parents and the families that go to your school. Is the sense that there's going to be more flexibility?
Um, Thankfully, we are an early start school. We're 8:30 to 3, so for the standard 9 to 5 person, it shouldn't be an issue. But it's quite convenient having it earlier in the day, and that way people can drop off in the kiss and ride and go immediately off to work, or be able to potentially walk their kid to school and go off to work, depending on how far away they are. So it definitely makes it a lot more flexible for parents. Especially, we also have the before and after care for those that do need to get up and go quickly.
Leslie, was there any conversation regarding that question in the statement development at all, or no?
No, we didn't quite get into that area. There were notions about it, like maybe we will have more opportunity there because some employers had already announced that they were not going to be going back to a bricks and mortar building. I think Rogers in Ottawa, for instance, was one of the leaders there who just said, no, we don't have to now. We can offload this site to, people can do this from home. So let's just do it from home. Internally, our own organization, from a management standpoint, started to ask that question, like, how do we address the fact that parents have to be parents right now in a different way than they've always been, or that that other constructs allow them to be parents. So we have to be more flexible. And we said, really, and we're not there yet, but we need to start looking at work as like measuring it by output instead of by hours spent, so that parents have some flexibility in their schedule to be everything to everybody, because there's a lot of pressure on parents right now to do so much. So so that's just from our personal standpoint, but not from a larger standpoint. It's hard to advocate for that. It does feel like there's an opportunity, but we have to look for where and when and how that can have the most impact.
And just a final question, very briefly, from everyone. A lot of talk in the chat about built environment. That is, in fact, the most effective things. You have to change physically how we build around the school and the walkways to the school to make it safe, and therefore more kids walking. So for people who might not be totally familiar with all of that, can any of you name a couple of key things that need to happen in terms of what it looks like around the school to provide more safety?
Or that you've seen work, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I will launch that by saying children on foot and bikes need to have their own access points without conflict with cars. So we need to think about it and build it from the school outwards, so that they can access the school without having to cross paths, like Jen had mentioned. Getting across the kiss and ride was just a nightmare. That shouldn't be the pathway that kids have to take into the school. We should be also limiting and making it more difficult for cars to access the school site, essentially. And that way, if it's more frustrating for them to get there, then they may choose to leave the car at home or further out from the school more often.
Yeah, Jen, you talked about having to walk across the parking lot.
Yes. There is a sidewalk on the bottom of it. It was our former principal that would direct traffic, which is a pro and a con in itself, that she did that. And she was very good at it, and made sure that, walkers and drivers and cyclists and whatnot can get to where they need to go safely.
Great. Constable McDonald, what kind of built environment changes have you seen that you've liked?
Well, I would just like to say that when we do put those items in place, such as those kiss and goes, hug and goes, or parking areas, that they just get used properly. As long as they're used properly and efficiently, then we shouldn't have any issues. It's generally just when we get all of a sudden that congestion and you get one or two vehicles or parents that don't want to move, and next thing you know, we've got a problem, right? And unless we're there to deal with it, it shouldn't be something that parents should have to deal with another parent to tell them to move, right? Just be common sense that, I'm just going to drop my child off here and move along and keep the traffic flowing, right? So I think we've put in some great measures, and I think as long as they're used properly, then we should be able to alleviate some of those issues.
Yeah, that's the key. It's make the easy choice, or the right choice, the easy choice. That kiss and ride or drop off or hug and drop off is, if it's in one direction. I know they've done a lot of thinking around that, but even things like, providing places for bikes to be stored while the kids are in school. Things that facilitate them to walk or bike to school. So unfortunately, we are at our time. We could chat, I think, for much longer than this. So I will wrap this up and thank our three panelists for participating today. It was very interesting to get your experiences, your different perspectives. Certainly all of our participants that joined us today, thank you for joining us, and we will have the recording available for you. And finally, thanks to Aviva for supporting this event. It's been very interesting, and their support of our elementary road safety program is so valuable. And also, I want to extend a thanks to the parachute team who coordinated everything and made this run so smoothly. So thank you, everyone. Have a rest of the day. Hope you are safe, and we will continue this discussion, I know. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks to you all. Take care.
Take care.
Be safe.